Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you so much for our time together. I want to take you to one of those verses in the Bible that I wrote "wow" next to. We find our reading today over in Acts chapter 10. I'm going to read you just one verse. It's one of my wow verses, verse 34. Then Peter began to speak. I now realize, wow, something he'd always known. But he said, I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism. Peter had grown up with the concept of spiritual elitism, that somehow Jews were better than everybody else, this concept of spiritual elitism. Now it's amazing to me today how even in the Christian world we have attitudes of spiritual elitism, we have attitudes of financial elitism, we have attitudes of educational elitism. We have people that look at others and say, you can't play drums in the church unless you drive a certain kind of a car. We have other Christian young people that have allowed an attitude to develop in the church that say, I don't want to play basketball with the person unless they have a certain type of car. They had to be our class. And you go, excuse me, dude, basketball is basketball. Now, one of the things that is occurring as we begin to prosper as a nation is these old attitudes of elitism are beginning to grow up in our culture again. And whether it's educational elite, the right school, whether it's spiritual elite, well, how much time do you spend in prayer? Well, I've been speaking in tongues longer than you. Whether it's financial elite, I have more money than you, I drive a fancier car than you. None of this is right. You and I need to recognize that God really doesn't care about our stuff. God really doesn't care about our education. God really doesn't care about what school we go to. God loves all of His children equally the same. Now, brothers and sisters, I really want to challenge you, and I'm not scolding, but I'm just challenging you a little bit. All of your life with me as your pastor, for 34 years, I've looked at you and I've said, you never look down at anybody, you never look up at anybody, you look every person straight in the eye as their equal. Now that is how we live our life as Christians. We are all equal at the cross. We are all equally saved. We are all equally loved by God. We are all equally anointed by God. Please, there is no spiritual elitism. I want to challenge you today to maybe let this come to a realization. Maybe some of you that are very wealthy need to come on visitation with me to some of the poor areas of town and see the fervent prayer of a poor family as they ask God for the food for the family, provision, and watch God provide. Maybe some of you who are so educationally elite and you've got your double DBs from the right schools, maybe you need to come sit down and talk with me and a guy on the street that's got more street smarts than you'll ever have. You see, intelligence and education are two different subjects. But more than anything else, maybe each one of us needs to come to God in prayer and say, Father, never let me look down at anybody and never let me look up at anybody. Lord, you love everybody equally the same. Come to a full realization of the truth that God does not show favoritism.